Those who claim that dating is simple are engaging in dishonesty. It is not a simple task. There are a lot of unspoken rules that we have to figure out, and most of the time, we do this by completely embarrassing ourselves on our date. After a few unsuccessful attempts, we are able to identify our errors. On the other hand, it is a lot simpler to recognize where you went wrong on a real date as opposed to through text. Did you even know that there were guidelines for sending a text message? You are able to observe the physical reaction of your date whenever you say something awkward or inappropriate. It's possible that they give you a strange look or fidget in their seat. The idea is that you play back the events of the day in your head and try to figure out where exactly you went wrong. When it comes to texting, things are done a little bit differently. Even if they texted, haha, one has to wonder whether or not they actually found what was said to be humorous. Do you take it that when they say, okay, the conversation is over and they are no longer interested in what you have to say? You can see that the interpretation is not simple at all. However, there are some texting rules that one should adhere to or use as a guide in order to have smooth sailing through their text conversations. If you follow these guidelines for texting, you can avoid some of the most common problems associated with this form of communication. If you're still having trouble with texting, it might be time to examine the content of your messages rather than the way you send them. It's not as difficult as you might think to follow the rules of texting. Number 1 is time. You should wait to text a woman. Wait at least 2 days before contacting. And when you do reach out, you would usually say something like, hey, how have you been? I meant to contact you sooner, but I've been a little busy. This shows her that number 1, you actually have a life, and number 2, you weren't super eager and needy when contacting her. Also, don't spend too much time texting back and forth. Texting isn't how you get to know a person. The communication isn't interpersonal, and if you find her attractive, you can be certain that there are many other men who are actively texting her as potential suitors as well. Texting, and phone time in general, should be used to set up a date where you can meet face to face. Texting back and forth on the phone, women can do that with their girlfriends and platonic male friends. You shouldn't allow them to do that with you. Besides, spending too much time texting back and forth takes away from your mystique. She's more likely to remember a face-to-face interaction than a text conversation. Set yourself apart. Be confident. Be attentive. Most importantly, be yourself. Number 2, grammar and spelling matter. It's possible that you think it's cool to say, N2 meters, or BRB. That was the case in 2010, to be sure. But nowadays, spelling and grammar matter. If you want to use slang, you should only do so around your close friends. Be sure to use correct English when interacting with the people you care about. It is important to avoid giving the impression to the person that they are breaking a code. It is not an attractive quality. Number 3, perform a final review of your texts aloud. If you read your texts out loud to yourself, you can get a better idea of how the other person will understand what you've written to them. You might think this is strange. For instance, if they ask you how are you doing and you respond with, I'm fine, they may become concerned. It gives the impression that you are upset and emotionally distant. Therefore, the best way to ensure the accuracy of your message is to read it aloud to yourself. Number 4, be careful when telling jokes. When you tell a joke to someone while sitting in front of them, they hear your voice and see your face, both of which help signal that what you said is meant to be taken in jest. However, they are unable to see anything through the text. When we joke about something via text, other people might take it the wrong way, which can lead to a messy situation. Instead, you should use emojis at the end of the joke, such as a wink face, so that you are completely safe. It guides them in the right direction, which is helpful. Number 5. You are not required to wait in order to respond. It's common knowledge that you should wait a few minutes before responding to someone, but why is that? Why pause when the conversation is flowing so naturally? Wait a couple of minutes before responding, however, if you're worried about coming off as overly eager. In general, you shouldn't give too much thought to the response time. Instead, you should focus on doing whatever seems natural to you at that precise moment. They will respond to you if they like you. Number 6, recognize when it is appropriate to end the conversation. People who are unsuccessful at texting are the ones who attempt to continue a conversation even though it is obvious that it is coming to an end. If the conversation comes to an end, this does not mean that you do not have a chance with this individual. In the real world, conversations come to an end, but people's feelings for one another have not changed. Therefore, you shouldn't believe that you have to talk non-stop in order for the two of you to feel like you have a connection to one another. Number 7. Be calm if you care about this person a lot. Maintaining your composure is not going to be an easy task. Obviously, if they don't message you right away, you might conclude that they are seeing someone else or that they aren't interested in the relationship. It is not necessary that this transpire. People have jobs, people have relationships with their families and friends, and not everyone is a huge fan of texting. Don't worry about it so much if they don't get back to you right away if you send them a message. If they do not respond to you on that day, wait a day or two before sending them a message, and if they still do not respond, the day after that. Number 8. Make sure your texts aren't too long. When someone sends you a text, you don't want them to expect you to read them an essay. Whenever they come across a lengthy piece of writing, they immediately assume that it is of poor quality. Make sure that your message is succinct and to the point. Why not call them instead of writing if it takes you more than 30 seconds to get your thoughts down on paper? Number 9. Share what you have been given. If they respond to you with a text that is only 1 or 2 words long, you should reply in the same way. They are not providing you with a lot of material to work with, so why would you risk injuring your finger by writing something in great detail? Having said that, if they send you lengthy texts, you shouldn't respond with a one-worded answer because doing so is impolite. Number 10. Laugh at yourself when you really mean it. Do not respond with a string of ha's if the person you are talking to has just said something that is not particularly funny. Instead, show some integrity and give it the ha or ha-ha it so rightfully deserves. If, on the other hand, they said something that was genuinely funny, then you should laugh uncontrollably and use as many ha's as you see fit. Number 11. Before calling them, make sure you have permission to do so. Now that we've reached this point, very few people actually communicate with one another via telephone. Another thing to keep in mind is that just because we text doesn't mean we want to talk to you over the phone. Who knows, maybe they're just too busy right now. But if you'd like to talk to them over the phone, you should send them a quick message first to make sure it's all right. Number 12. Don't use your phone to vent about your problems when you're on it. Texting isn't meant to take the place of actually talking to someone. If you have a problem with this person, you should avoid texting them about it. The in-depth discussions should be saved for face-to-face, seated conversation. I understand that it may be frightening, but please do not cower behind the screen. Number 13. Friend zoning. If you blend in, you'll get friend zoned. To avoid slipping into the friend zone at all costs, avoid idle chit-chat like the plague. Tease her, play with her, include her on inside jokes so the feelings of fun and attraction she felt for you when you first met are not only maintained but amped up, so your texts light up her eyes rather than dull her day with the burden of having to text you back. There's no excuses for falling into the friend zone, and even if you think it's impossible to answer some of her texts with anything other than a friend-to-friend response, then you're wrong. She asks you, "How's your day going?" You might think the only possible answer you can give is, "It's going great, how's yours?" But instead, this is the perfect opportunity to tease her. Clearly it's going much better than yours. This way, she'll probably reply by saying, "Nah, mine's way better than yours." And from there you can move into a much more playful frame. Number 14. Communicate with one another through texting. This bridge should take you to a hangout, which satisfies one of the most important rules of texting. It's problematic if you text them more often than you see them in person. There are always going to be a few notable exceptions, though. Texting shouldn't take the place of your relationship with this person, regardless of whether they live out of town or have a work schedule that conflicts with yours. Number 15. Always text in a polite manner. Text the person at the appropriate time if you are aware of their schedule. Therefore, if they sleep at night, you shouldn't text them excessively unless it's about something that's critically important. If you woke them up with a string of pointless texts, the vast majority of people would like to see you dead. Number 16. Always reply. Be careful not to be that person who reads the text but never responds to it. You should still respond, even if it's going to be a few days late. It's impolite to ghost someone. Just tell them that you don't want to talk to them if that's the case. It's just not polite to do so. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe while you're here. Check out my other videos.